No, it's not the game, but you know what? In 2020, in the Big Ten Eastern Division, it is the game. At the Shoe, noon Eastern time on Saturday, Indiana. Yes, Indiana, not Penn State, Michigan, or even Michigan State in recent years. Indiana is the game on Ohio State's schedule here in 2020. We talk Ohio State football each and every week. Most of the time, right at this time, Wednesday, 2 o'clock Eastern time. We got Steve Hellwagon on the line from Bucknuts 247 Sports, and of course, Tony Gerdeman from Buckeyes Scoop. Boys, how you doing this week?
Doing good.
Good.
Doing well.
Excellent. So let's start with the news of the day, or the news of the hour, that Tony just brought to our attention regarding fans in the stands. So there have been no fans in the stands for any Big Ten games throughout the entire season. Now it appears as though the university, or the Big Ten maybe, I don't know exactly the source, Tony, you can fill us in, is taking this to another degree.
Yeah, this is Ohio State University Department of Athletics handing it down, partly because of the Columbus Department of Health and their stay-at-home advisory. So previously, friends and families of the players, mostly family, have been allowed to attend games, and now that will not be the case, and it doesn't look like it's going to be the case for any sports the rest of the fall. And so the little bit of time that family got to see their children, their athlete children, now has been cut even further, because they will not be allowed to attend the games the rest of the year.
How many people were showing up for these games? Family and friends. You know, you've got close to 200 football players, but not everybody's going to bring a drove of people. Was there some type of limitation on it? Do you guys have an idea what that was?
The attendance for the Nebraska game was listed as 1,344. The Rutgers was at 1,275. And so, yeah, it's not a lot of people. And I think it's only, you figure 100 players, and I don't know if they get 2 or 4 tickets. So, there's so much room, but then they keep them all in specific areas, so it's less room to, I guess, clean and monitor. But man, it's just it's a bit much that they can't even allow family to watch. But because the restrictions, and trying to say this in all of the proper ways, the restrictions of crowds has now eliminated this as well.
I think we're all seem to be pretty much on the same page. Certainly this can take a political path, but at the same time, my goodness, Steve, there's a lot of elbow room in that stadium, I think.
Yeah, I'm not going to be critical of Ohio State, or really the government of the state of Ohio, I guess, but it just seems to me like this is overkill. I don't think there were any problems with the first 2 games that they had at Ohio Stadium. I've covered 13 high school games now, plus 2 Ohio State games, and I haven't seen one issue yet with anybody who couldn't operate under the restrictions set out by the state, or the OHSAA, or Ohio State, or I was even at the Penn State games. So that's 3 Ohio State games. I haven't seen any issues, and I don't know to me, it all seems like a token effort to just kind of go along with whatever. I think the families of the players are the bare essentials. I mean, I don't think you're saving anybody or anything if they're all masked up and spread out and just staying together in a small group during the day outside. I'm not sure what you're really going for here, but hey, I mean, it's 2020. I guess it is what it is. It's very unfortunate, and I don't know. I don't get it, but I know that they've included basketball in with some of this, and the indoor winter sports are going to be operating under this same proviso. And I consider them something different, because those are indoor sports. I mean, this is, something that's not supposed to survive a whole lot outside. So the virus I'm talking about, but again, I'm not an expert on the pandemic. So I don't know. I'll defer to everybody else, but this just seems like a little bit of overkill to me, and something that's completely unnecessary. If these families are taking the proper precautions and they were fine a month ago, and there's been no documented spread of this thing in and around an Ohio State football game, then what difference does it make? I guess I'm just confused.
Well, not to mention, Mark, and I'll be quick here. The families all hang out together. They're staying at same hotels. They go out to eat, so they're interacting together well before anything happens in the Ohio Stadium.
Steve seems to be raising the same general question that I raised for umpteen years at various stops, most recently for 19 years in management meetings when there was some kind of policy or procedure change that I was unaware of there being an issue. Okay, what's the issue? Can I hear what the issues have been? Okay, yeah, that's where we stand on that. So that's unfortunate. But I don't think it takes away from the game. The game is huge. It's a top 10 matchup between Indiana and Ohio State. Steve, I know what my concern for the Buckeyes is based on the matchups in regards to what Indiana brings as a certain positional unit versus Ohio State's perceived weakness played out through 3 games. But I'll leave it up to you in regards to your first thoughts about this matchup.
Well, there's a lot of thoughts, and I've been following Ohio State football better part of 40 years, and usually the Indiana game is kind of that sorbet or whatever that you use to kind of cleanse the palate in between courses of the real meal, I guess. I mean, there's always a 42-3 win over Indiana between a big game between OSU and Penn State and OSU and Michigan, or whatever. I go back to the 90s. And they got in that murderer's row stretch run in both 95 and 96. And I think they blasted Indiana both years as they were just on that, on that thing toward the finish line of Michigan. It was kind of like the old days. Michigan was the big game at the end of the year, and Indiana was just ticking time, and Illinois, and, just ticking time to get to the real game at the end of the year. Lo and behold, in 2020, the craziest year of any of our lives, Indiana is the big game. And, I'll give, before we get into X's and O's, I'll just do just a couple of moments on the historical perspective. These teams have played off and on since 1901, 120 years, essentially. And Ohio State has only lost Indiana 12 times. And only lost to them, hasn't lost to them since 1988, and has won 25 straight, which I saw was quoted as the longest active streak between FBS teams in the country. So I think the first hurdle for Ryan Day is getting his team and his players to believe Indiana is a credible threat when they beat them 51-10 last year in Bloomington. And, yet – of those 25 games that Ohio State's won in a row since a tie in 1990, only 4 of them have been settled by single digits. Now, 2 of those came during the 7-year run of Urban Meyer, and one of those, 52-49 in 2012, and then 34-27 in 2015, a game where Ohio State had almost 600 yards total offense, and Zeke ran for about 7,000 yards himself that day. Excuse me. And Eli Apple, the great Eli Apple, who's bounced around to about 7 NFL teams in 3 years, he had to bat away a pass in the end zone on 4th down with time expiring on the last play of the game for the Buckeyes to get out of Bloomington with that win, with one of their greatest teams they've ever had in terms of star power. To get out of there with the win. And of course, we know 2015 was a major disappointment, and that game endemic of it. But at any rate, Ohio State, any measure, any way you want to look at this on paper, at least historically, beats Indiana, and beats Indiana like a drum usually. But this may not be the case this year. And Indiana 4-0. Indiana in the top 10 for the first time since 1967 season. Ohio State will play the 99th time in school history. They will play as a top 10 team against a top 10 team, and Indiana's number 9, Ohio State's number 3. Indiana, the grand total of games in the entire history of Indiana football where Indiana has played as a top 10 team against a top 10 team is 1. And it was the Rose Bowl game played on January the 1st, 1968. Number 1 USC beat number 4 Indiana 14-3. And that is it. Never happened in the regular season. So that'll tell you 38 Big Ten championships for Ohio State, 2 for Indiana, and none since 1967. And Indiana has never won the Big Ten in a season when it's played Ohio State, 1945 or 1967. So I just laid all the groundwork for you there. Now we can kind of turn. I'll shut up and let Tony talk for a little bit. But that kind of gives you the lay of the land and understanding. And I tweeted this out this morning, and I just amused myself. This is Lucy Van Pelt, which is Ohio State, and Charlie Brown, which is Indiana. And they've had games where they have threatened, and they have tried, and they have been there in the fourth quarter. And then Ohio State, Lucy Van Pelt just pulls that ball away, and Charlie Brown goes like this, and the Indiana fans mutter off and say, "Damn, just more weeks to basketball." That's that. But this year, though, maybe something a little bit different. So that's my diatribe on my years and years of watching Ohio State just pummel Indiana one time after another, and how this one may not be quite like that.
Oh, was it 2014 where they needed like 3 touchdowns from Jalen Marshall? 2015, they needed like Ezekiel Elliott with like a 60, a 70, and an 80-yard run.
Yeah, in succession, it was 55, 65, and 75. And I think Coleman, the guy from Indiana, he had 200 yards in 2014 and was close to 200 yards, I think, again in 2015, I think. They all kind of run together. But Indiana has done some good things against Ohio State. It's just like Michigan. They've just ran into Ohio State when Ohio State is as good as it can ever be.
But, Steve, Xander Diamont is not walking through that door.
I watched Xander Diamant's dad here on Bold and the Beautiful a little while earlier with Don. And it was interesting. I wondered if he was flying in for those games from Los Angeles back when Big Z was running for over 100 yards against the Buckeyes.
Well, he's going to have to cancel his ticket today.
Yeah.
But another stat that my podcast partner Tom Moore gave me was, so this rivalry started in 1901. Indiana won 5 of the first 6 matchups.
Yep, like the Michigan rivalry.
And have won 7 over the last 114 years. So there has been a little bit of a lack of balance there. But for me, this game really comes down to just affecting Michael Penix. And if they do that, then he's an average quarterback. If they don't, and he can set his feet, and sometimes he doesn't even set his feet, and he can make some throws. But I think if you can affect him, then this can get ugly. And if you can protect Justin Fields, then it gets really ugly. But those two things aren't set in stone, and that's where Indiana, with all of their blitzing, can make this very interesting. And Ohio State can try to simulate it, but there's only so much you can do with the scout team.
The couple notes I'll mention is that, as you guys will know, Earl Bruce called a 1987 loss to Indiana 31-10 in Columbus the darkest day in Ohio State football history. That's how much respect
was there.
given to the Hoosiers. You were there. I was watching
a
on
sophomore.
television. Also, I'll bring up that my civics teacher. So you bring up the Indiana 1967 Rose Bowl team. My civics teacher was an offensive lineman on the Indiana team that went to the Rose Bowl in 1967.
John Pont. I think John Pont was the coach. And, anybody who followed Ohio State in the 80s knows that it kind of went off a cliff there at the end of the Earl period and the beginning of the Coop period. It was really not watchable a lot of weeks. And that Indiana game, 31-10, Ohio State, believe it or not, was not with number 9 in the country, 3-0-1. And I think they had tied LSU earlier in the season. And Ohio State had outplayed LSU, but victimized the SEC officials, called like 10 penalties on Ohio State and 2 on LSU. And I can remember I was in a football officiating class with Chris Spielman, and he told the guy who was teaching the class that he kept telling the umpire he was being held on every play, and they said, "I'll just play on." And that was kind of the backdrop of that game. And Indiana came in and just did a number on them. And that 87, 88, 89 period, when I was there, sophomore, junior, and senior, to be very honest with you, just to get through the games, you really had to smuggle your own 6-pack of beer under your jacket and sit there. I'm sitting in B deck and, just, minding my own business and just guzzling one beer after another back, because it was the only way that you could really get through the entire game, was to just sit there and have a couple beers and just kind of shake your head and said, man, I thought when I agreed to come to Ohio State, I get to watch good football. And that wasn't so much the case, unfortunately.
Steve, when I got to Ohio State in 94, that's when I did get to see good football. My drinking would take place after the Michigan game in 95, 96, 97.
97.
Yeah.
99, 2000.
Then it stopped.
Not so much after
Been
that.
stone cold sober ever since.
Yeah, well, you're drinking in celebration in most every Michigan game after that. But yeah,
we'll
crazy.
get back to Indiana, but the LSU game in 1987 sparks a thought that from a quote of Chris Spielman, asked about going to Tiger Stadium and having to face LSU at Tiger Stadium, and the vaunted SEC crowd. And Chris Spielman said, "There's only one Tiger Stadium, and that's in Massillon."
That's a good one. I know that Harvey Williams was one of their running backs, and he was running his mouth. And after the game, Spielman said, "Yeah, he's so good. He's third team or something or the other." Now, I think Harvey Williams did bang around the NFL for a couple of years, but
Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, so that was another footnote. Another one out of that game was they handed old Bruce the pregame timing sheet, and it said Ohio State team entrance, and right under it, it said LSU team cheer or something like that. And the bells went off in Earl's head that they want us out on the field so they can intimidate us with some kind of big whatever. And he held his ground, and he said, "No, LSU's going out on the field first. We're coming out second. And, we're not going to be out there when they come out, and you're not going to intimidate us." And the officials are like pleading with him, "Come on, man, you got to go. This is what it was set up." And he's like, "Nope, LSU goes first." And Earl held his ground. So one of his great last stands, a tie at LSU.
Well, neither is Anthony Thompson going to walk through that door either, and that was 41-7 the next year. But Stevie Scott, I guess, and Samson James will, and they're only averaging, Tony, about 3 to 3.5 yards per carry. So what I was alluding to off the top was Ohio State's secondary, the concerns there versus what could be argued to be the second best wide receiver / tight end group in the Big Ten. And that being a trouble spot for the Buckeyes, but maybe they can lean things toward the pass defense and rely on their front four to deal with the run, since Indiana struggled there.
Yeah, with as bad as Indiana's running game is, you feel like you can stop it with the nickel defense and just worry about the passing game, even though Ohio State will tell you everything we do is to stop the run. And then, like Larry Johnson says, we stop the run, and then on the way to stopping the run, you can go get the quarterback. And so that's what his defensive line does. But after seeing the way Indiana went after Michigan and Michigan State, they attacked Michigan. They threw the ball way more, like 17 times to 5 times in the first quarter against Michigan. And then the second quarter, it was balanced. Third quarter, it was overweighted towards the pass. And why not? Because Michigan's defense, their pass defense is terrible. Ohio State's pass defense, I don't think is terrible. It's probably the weak spot, so why wouldn't you go after it? I just wonder how one-dimensional you can be against the Buckeyes with this pass rush, because if you're just going to throw it, then they know that, and that helps the pass rush. But Indiana gets rid of the ball really quickly. Michael Penix does, and he's he can feel it. He can evade. He's not really running the ball this year, but he's obviously capable, and he can escape and create extra time. But yeah, if they just come out and because I don't know, I think like it makes sense that they would throw the ball and they would work on the throw and just try to throw as much as they can. But again, then Ohio State wants any opponent, they want them to be one-dimensional. And so if Indiana is one-dimensional, does that play then, Steve, into Ohio State's hands, even if it's one-dimensional towards the Buckeyes' weakness?
Yeah, I think you make really good points there. It's kind of like Indiana hasn't run the football because they really haven't needed to run the football. I mean, they've been in some tight situations. I mean, obviously they trailed Michigan State, or rather Penn State, in that first game, and had to rally to force the overtime. So they've been in some tough spots and in some tough yardage situations, but Penix has always pulled them through one way or the other. And, I'm excited to see him play in person. We did not get to see him play last year in the game at Indiana. Peyton Ramsey played, and the Buckeyes, Chase Young just, swallowed him up whole last year. And Ohio State kind of smothered Indiana. It was a hot day last year in Bloomington, and the Buckeyes just jumped on them. It was 30-10 at halftime, and it wasn't even that close, really. And Chris Olave kind of took over the game. He caught a bomb, and he also blocked a punt for a safety. And both those plays happened in a span of about 2 minutes of clock time in the first half. And it was just like, kind of like the Karate Kid. Your karate is no good. Your football is no good. And, just kind of gave them no chance to even compete in that game. And I think that's a thing, we talked about from the Ohio State side. Psychologically, do you take this team seriously? I think from the Indiana side, they're talking a great game. Oh, we're playing wonderful football, and we came here to win games, and we're not surprised by it. And this is a glass ceiling that they have kind of punched through. When you think about, for the last 5 or 6 years, the East has been Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State, jumble them up in pretty much any order. And that's been the top 4. Indiana last year was 0-4 against those teams. Had a couple close calls, whatever, as the season went on. I think they lost to Michigan State by 10 in a game where Michigan State may have scored a touchdown in the final seconds to make it 10. It was a 3-point game, basically. So that was their mission going into this season, was to we'd like talk a lot about in the job market, crash through that glass ceiling and put yourself on the top rung. And Indiana has done that. They beat Michigan State. They beat Penn State. They beat Michigan. First time they beat Michigan since 1987. Only the second time in 26 meetings they've beaten Penn State. And, first time, obviously, they beat Michigan and Penn State in the same year. 2 wins over ranked teams, although, those ranked teams are combined 1-7 now. So let's give them credit for what they've done. And Penix has been fabulous. His wide receivers, Whop Philyor, number 1. Ty Freifogel, try and say that 6 times fast, number 3. He's been great. And they have another kid, Marshall, who caught this amazing fade, a 6'4" kid, number 13, Marshall. I think Miles Marshall may be his name. Caught a great fade pass for a touchdown over Michigan. So you have what I would consider to be the possession guy, Freifogel, who can take a small play and turn it into a big one. You have the slot receiver, Philyor, who can do everything. And then you have the big split end here with Marshall, kind of a mirror image of Ohio State and their receiver group. And then the same with their tight end, Peyton Hendershot. He's fabulous as well. I don't know that he's on the same level as Freiermuth from Penn State, or maybe even Ruckert and Farrell from Ohio State, but he's up there in the top 3 or 4 discussion in the Big Ten. So it's not just Penix. He's got great players around him. And I'm going to be interested to see how they go about attacking Ohio State's defense, a defense which played phenomenal first half against Penn State, first half against Rutgers, played terrible second half against Penn State, and as bad as it's been in years in the second half against Rutgers.
We've been asking for questions. Sorry to cut you off,
Yeah.
Tony. We've asked for questions. So Cheryl has served up, and I don't know that we need to drill this down to the specifics, or if it was just asked as a general theme that Olave and Garrett Wilson cannot be covered. So she asked, Steve, Tony, can anybody in the Big Ten cover Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson? Well, let's certainly check off the Michigan football team. Then I'll make your list size down from there, Tony.
Yeah, no, nobody can cover them both. You might have a corner that can do their best against one of them, but the thing is, you'll have Garrett Wilson in a slot, and who do you put there? Do you put your number 2 corner? Do you put your number 1 corner? Do you put your number 3 corner? Is it a safety? You've got arguably one of the best receivers in the Big Ten, and Garrett Wilson. And when they put him in a slot, that makes it a difficult matchup for anybody, because if you do pull the number 1 corner to play him, he's not used to playing in the slot, so you generally don't do that. And if you were going to pull the number 1 corner, you're pulling him off of Chris Olave. That's not smart. And so Garrett Wilson just gives them a tremendous matchup advantage against anybody they place. And and then Wilson will also play outside as well. But there's nobody in the Big Ten, and Tywone Mullen is good for Indiana, but he's one of those, like I said, sometimes teams have one guy, they don't have 2, and maybe that's the case with Indiana. But yeah, nobody in the Big Ten can handle them. I don't think if Ohio State gets pass protection, nobody in the country can. You can't shut those 2 down.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you, Tony. It's going to take a special defense that can actually get after Justin Fields, which I think is the first part of this equation, is that you have to get in his face and impact him and hit him and get him out of his comfort zone. And nobody really has done that. I don't know that Clemson even did it, to be very honest with you, in the game that they lost on his watch. We were listening to Zach Harrison today, a defensive end for Ohio State, and he was asked about going up against Fields and Penix in some regard and what it takes. And he said when he watches Fields, on the sideline while the game's going on, what he sees is guys coming free occasionally with a clean hit, and Fields has that pocket presence to avoid the rush, step aside, step up, backpedal, whatever it might be. He'll even circle out of there. He'll even take 3 steps backward and circle out of there to avoid the oncoming rusher. And as Harrison said, still put the ball right on the money to his receiver, make a big play out of it, which should be a negative play. So Fields is the first part of this equation. He takes the negative play and turns it into a positive play and generally puts the ball where only his guy can get it. So I think that's the first part of the equation. Does Indiana have anybody going against Ohio State's offensive line who can really make it a tougher day on Fields? And I don't know the answer to that. I look at their secondary, and he brought up Tywone Mullen, a sophomore, number 3. He's fabulous at corner. Reese Taylor is a junior. He's a good hitter. And I think their safeties make good plays on the ball. I think Jamar Johnson is one of them, number 22. He had an interception, a really nice play last week, or whatever week they played Michigan, I guess 2 weeks ago. He made a really nice interception of a Milton pass. Of course, who doesn't intercept a Milton pass? But I
got one right now.
oh, those poor bastards. Those poor people. They're just volunteers. We had a chance with Greg Madison today, and I texted our little group, and I was like, somebody needs to ask this guy about Harbaugh in Michigan, and start the question with, I mean, you were there. I'm sure there were at least a couple good times. I mean, how bad does this make you feel to see what they're going through up there, or whatever? And of course, I'm joking. I don't think you would ask Greg Madison to kind of revel in Michigan's misery, and I'm just digressing because it's what everybody down here likes to talk about. But at any rate, getting back on Indiana, I think they got their hands full. I think any team's going to have their hands full with Olave and Wilson, and it's going to take pass rush. It's going to take great secondary play. You got to make Fields get the ball out fast before. A lot of these patterns are double moves sometimes that these guys are making because they're confident that Fields will have the time to get it done. And that goes back to Nick Petit-Ferrer. We heard, Day yesterday made the comment that Petit-Ferrer is making upperclassman type adjustments against the blitz, where the upperclassmen have seen all the different things that teams can do. And Ferrer's only played 3 games, Petit-Ferrer, and he's already kind of picking up some of these little wrinkles that you can't show him in practice. They're only seeing him in a game, and yet it's not phased him yet. So that's a good sign, I think, for Ohio State pass protection.
Just had a conversation that will be posted in the morning with Indiana Rivals writer, and he made the statement before predicting Indiana would win the game like 35-31. No, 31-25 was his final, as I'm posting a 35-17. Steve can't believe it. Yes, he went 31-25. He says Ohio State has not seen a defense like Indiana's. I think Penn State's, before you go, Tony, I think Penn State's defense rivals Indiana's when they were motivated. And through 2 games, Penn State was certainly motivated and played a decent game against Ohio State. And certainly I don't think these Buckeyes forget facing Wisconsin twice last year, a Michigan defense that they abused that was still ranked in the top 10 in the country. And, oh, yeah, that Clemson bunch and others.
Plus, they practice against themselves as well.
Oh, yeah.
And while I totally respect Indiana's defense, and they have a good defense, and I love Tom Allen and what they do, their defense has played 4 of the worst offenses in the Big Ten. And I tweeted, I think I tweeted this out, or I wrote about it somewhere today, that every quarterback that they have faced, save for Noah Vedral, has been benched at some point this season for poor play. And Vedral did get benched against Ohio State, but that was just because the game was over and they wanted Artur Sikowski to get some reps. So
Artie Bucco.
Exactly. So they have played teams that have quarterback issues, and more than that, they have the best running backs they will have faced will come this weekend, and unless you want to put Isaiah Pacheco up there, which, all due respect to Isaiah Pacheco, I don't know that he'd be starting at Ohio State or backing up Master Teague. And so they have. While maybe Ohio State hasn't faced anybody as good as Indiana's defense, and Justin Fields, I think I may have asked him that today, and he's like, I don't know. There's certainly no question that Indiana's defense has faced nobody like Ohio State's offense. And I'll tell you what, if these blitzes get picked up, then there's going to be some big plays by the Buckeyes in that passing game. And and really that's what Indiana has to do. They have to gamble. And we talked to Josh Myers about a little bit about this on Tuesday, where he said they've seen defenses have to attack them in such a way that it's not sound, it's not fundamentally smart, but you have to do what you have to do. And sometimes it catches Ohio State off guard because you don't practice against unsound defenses, and yet the opponents have to do anything they can to try and stop this. And then the key will just be Ohio State picking up those blitzes, which I'm not sure. I think maybe that favors Master Teague's pass blocking more than Trey Sermon's pass blocking, as we've seen this year. But if they pick up those blitzes, then it kind of like Michigan. What chance does that defense have?
I'm sure the Buckeyes respect Indiana, but if you did a good imitation of Justin Fields there, I don't think he's that concerned about the Indiana defense, like that he's going to be overwhelmed.
No, and he's done well picking up blitzes, avoiding them. How many times have we seen him just a little? He's even like dipping a little bit before the blitz gets there and affecting the blitzer, and then he just moves out of the way, or he'll just spin around. And now they still do get to him, but that's football, and you're not going to be clean the entire game. Indiana is really focused on turnovers, like turning Ohio State over and stealing some possessions. If Ohio State doesn't turn it over, then I don't think Indiana can keep up offensively.
Next time I need a Justin Fields imitation, I'll go to Steve. Justin Fields in the pocket.
Yeah,
Fields does that. He makes that exact sound.
He's uncanny. I mean,
might be able to hear it this Saturday.
We've been watching, and of course, I don't think Ohio State's been the bastion of great quarterback play. I mean, this isn't I don't know. This isn't a Leach thing where you run one quarterback through there and they put up huge numbers. Or I don't know who the quarterback whisperer is. I guess Oklahoma and what they're doing down there with
Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, Lincoln Riley. But his mechanics. I mean, let's go back to Rutgers just for 1 second and just recap. He threaded a ball down the left side to Garrett Wilson on a crossing route in between two defenders who were going like this. And I mean, if he's a split second early or a split second late with that, it gets intercepted or deflected. Instead, I think Wilson was almost stunned as the two guys crossed in front of him that, oh my God, I've got this ball. I mean, it was incredible. He threw, and Day after the game was marveling. The one touchdown pass was like from the 30-yard line where they snapped the ball. He threw it from the 40-yard line, and it hit Olave at the pylon to the outside where he was the only guy who could get it. And Day likened it to like a quick, like a 10, 15-yard out pass. And when you reviewed it on tape, it went 40 yards. I mean, that's uncanny. His rollout going the other way to Olave, he had faked the give and came on a naked bootleg back to the right. And he's running, Olave's running, he's running, Olave's running, and you're wondering, is he going to throw this? And he hits it perfectly. And Olave, I don't know if he got 1 or 2 feet in, but he got at least one in, obviously, and made the catch. It was only where he could get it. Nobody else could put a hand on it. And I'm missing one more. Oh, the go to Jamison Williams. There was a coverage break, it seemed to me, on that, and a mix-up. And, you don't normally look at Jamison Williams, but I don't even know if he was the designed first read on that play. But, there was nobody within 15 yards of him. He found him in stride, end zone, touchdown. There's 4 NFL plays right there. And I don't know as much about this as Ryan Day, but they've got to be looking at this like, if we've got a guy who's this capable, make these kind of throws and never makes a turnover, 41-1 touchdown to interception ratio in 13 Big Ten games right now, 41-1 for Justin Fields in 2 seasons, and no end in sight. I mean, no end in sight. I mean, what was he going to do against Maryland? 350-5. Boom. Just mark it. 350-5. I mean, was there anybody who doubted that was what was going to happen had they played that game? So,
Tony, you mentioned it from the first time he stepped on the field at practice. This guy's different.
Well, to be fair, it was him and Matthew Baldwin throwing the ball, but there was
night,
yes,
and day.
it was very different. But that dude has exceeded expectations, and the expectations were high. I remember games last year where just because all we had known was, okay, Dwayne Haskins was the best we had seen in terms of the most accurate Ohio State quarterback ever, and you can't expect Justin Fields to be that. And so we would go into the pregame shows and say, don't be surprised if Fields is maybe 10 for 25, because that's what happened to JT Barrett, that's what happened to Braxton Miller, that's what happened to Cardale. Everybody has struggles, and he never did, and he's always 60, 70, 80% completion percentage. He's now up to 87% this year through 3 games. And that's why I say, if you just give him time, if the pass protection is there, Ohio State can ride him to a national championship with not relative ease, but I don't see anybody being able to keep up or stop it because the receivers are so good, and Fields is also so good and as accurate as Steve said. Just I've said it before, he's not throwing into windows, he's throwing into dryer vents, just even tiny little places that only the receiver can get to. And as long as they continue to catch the ball, and I don't know if you guys have noticed, Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson don't really drop much. So
just the one I can remember.
Yeah.
So Mini Steve, we want to honor his various comments and questions. So he being the one who picked Indiana to win 35-17, he mentioned something about there not being a crowd in the stadium, how that will affect the game. So remove the crowd of 1,300, Tony. How is this going to affect the game?
Well, not having the parents there to watch, certainly they'll have to, I don't know, maybe check their phones on the bench to see what their parents are saying about them on Twitter. But Zach Harrison mentioned it today. Like it's not as much fun, or it's different playing with no crowd, because when you get a big sack or something, the entire stadium goes crazy and you feed off of that and it builds this momentum. And now when that happens, you just have to go to the sideline and kind of like simulate the reaction, and it's not the same. And Ryan Day has said the same thing, where you could block a punt or something that would normally change the game and change the momentum and change the atmosphere, and now it's a big play, but then it's over and done with, and now another play starts, and really the momentum isn't there, and the energy isn't there, and you can try to create it on your own all you want. It's not the same as having 105,000 people in the stadium, and I think we all know that, and it does impact them, and so there, it's is it a negative? It's a negative at home, and we see the home field advantage has kind of disappeared this year, and it's players will tell you it's strange playing in these games, and coaches can hear everything, and so there's aspects that they like that is better, but Ryan Day would much rather have 100,000 Ohio State fans and 4,000 quiet visiting fans off in their little corner in Ohio Stadium.
So we've got a comment coming in just to have everyone recognize what we deliver here each and every week with Ohio State Football Talk with Tony Gerdeman from Buckeye Scoop, Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts from 247 Sports, and typically Kevin Noon from Buckeye Grove. So James Scott says, hello all, checking in to support Mark's channel. And while we're checking in for support, let's all help by clicking the like button. So there's a number of ways you can do that. So hit the like button. Yes. Also understand that we've got a couple professionals here, and usually 3 that deliver Ohio State football knowledge, insight, information. Steve typically majors on the historical, as we heard earlier, like no one else. So please support the channel, support what we do specifically on this show. And I will let anyone else there know in regards to sponsors. If you've got a sponsor, if you run a business yourself or know of anyone who does, and it might be a good fit to get on here and reach 5,000 or 6,000 people at a time, then contact me at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Easy to remember, MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Anything else come up from the conversations this week from Ryan Day and so forth? There were a couple comments made here in the live chat concerning, did Tom Allen say something concerning Ohio State hype created by media and fans? Does anyone know of anything there?
I didn't see that. I saw him tearing up, saying he doesn't care what anybody else says, like Indiana can win this game, something to that effect. Steve, I don't know what you saw.
Yeah, I have not paid his comments too much mind this week. He has always seemed to me to be a straight shooter and a guy who respects the game and doesn't get involved in a lot of trash talk. And I think the comments that he's made have been kind of matter of fact. Well, we had the whole country who's looked down on us for decades and whatever and whatever. And we know what we've done here. We know how hard we've worked. We know the hurdles that we've cleared in the as I made reference to earlier, the teams they could never beat, who they've suddenly been able to beat. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, this is a different year, okay? If this was a real year, Michigan and Penn State would both be roughly 500 teams because they would have beaten up on 2 or 3 non-conference teams, and probably that would have in turn catapulted them to a Big Ten win somewhere along the line. I don't know which one it was. I mean, by all rights, Penn State should have beaten Indiana. If the running back does what the Browns running back did on Sunday, which is go out of bounds at the 1-yard line and not kick the ball off to the opposing team and give them the entree to tie the game and send it to overtime, We're not sitting here talking about a top 10 Indiana team. We're talking about an Indiana team that's, ranked 20th, instead. I mean, let's be honest. They got outgained 2-1 in that game by Penn State. So teams have put up yardage against Indiana. They just haven't beaten Indiana. And that's the thing. I wonder, just based on the defense, and I don't know which Ohio State defense are we going to get. Are we going to get the first half Ohio State defense that's dominated people, or are we going to get the second half Ohio State defense, a mix-mash of backup guys that have had to fix in there and can't, close an umbrella? I mean, what are we going to see? Because what I wonder is if we end up in some type of a track meet where the teams just race to the goal line and then the other team races to the other goal line, and you're just trading touchdown for touchdown. Like, there was a Michigan game a couple of years ago that started out that way. It was like 14-all, 21-all, and then Michigan, pulled a hammy or whatever, and Ohio State just kept going, So I don't know. I think we're in for an interesting game, but I think the Ohio State defense is really the wild card in this thing. If they play like they're capable, Indiana may be lucky to get 20 points, and I don't know how Indiana keeps Ohio State from scoring 35 or 40. So that's, I'm still working on a score in my mind, but those are kind of the two wild card things I look at.
I'm working on interpreting this question from Jesse Hughes. Is it possible that the Ohio State's defensive issues so far are related to the types of player the Big Ten as a whole recruits now, or maybe the chaotic start to the season? Well, it can be differentiated between the type of player the Big Ten recruits and the type of player Ohio State recruits, Tony.
Yeah, any Ohio State defensive issues right now are, in my opinion, due to the fact that they lost 3 starters in the secondary, including one early. They continue to lose starters in the secondary early. They missed out on – they had a couple of decommitments the last couple of years at corner, which makes them thinner at corner. And so the iron isn't sharpening iron as much there. And the importance of what Jordan Fuller did in this defense last year as the deep safety, the lone wolf out there, they don't have that this year with Marcus Hooker, who is missing tackles, and Josh Proctor can't just do that because they have him doing several other things. So they're still trying to figure out who they are, and not having the non-conference games to do that has been an issue. It's been an issue for Harry Miller on the offensive line to just start it, just get right into Big Ten play. That's not usually the case for any offensive lineman in their first year. So, and it's the same for the defensive starters in the secondary. I don't know where recruiting and the rest of the Big Ten comes into it there. But I agree with you, Mark. Ohio State is recruiting at a different level in the Big Ten. And so maybe what is he saying? The Ohio State defense isn't being tested because the Big Ten isn't recruiting well enough? I don't know. Really, they haven't really played the top echelon teams yet anyway. And although I guess I forgot Penn State was in there, but they are 0-4. I don't know. The recruiting can always get better, just as the coaching got better when Urban Meyer came in. And the recruiting needs to continue to get better. Tom Allen is helping that at Indiana.
We're still at the stage of the season when comparing these scores and these teams and then saying, well, this happened to this team. Well, they must not be as good as we thought they were because they did that against that team. And we're starting to get more information per week where we can collectively put it together. But we're still at that. How good is Penn State? Well, they're not that good now. Well, maybe they were good early. Maybe they're not good now. Maybe they're a different team. Michigan was great the first week, and obviously they're awful now. And on and on and on. So when Indiana goes out and beats Michigan State 24-0, and Michigan State played a great game against Michigan, well, how good is Michigan? And otherwise, they're getting trampled by everybody else.
I think this is also just a different year where it's really easy to quit because things are so hard right now, and it's really easy to let down given everything and everything players are asked to do. And you lose a couple of games, and now the questions are like, why am I doing all of this? And it's hard to just keep that up, I think, which is a credit to Ohio State. It's a credit to Indiana.
One of the things I think about, from Ohio State standpoint is, and this is something over the years you have to watch is, they send so many guys to the NFL. I mean, let's go. Chase Young, gone to the NFL. Devon Hamilton and Jayshon Cornell are in the NFL. Malik Harrison is in the NFL doing a great job for the Ravens. And then in the back end, 3 guys have gone to the NFL with Fuller, Okuda, and Arnett. I mean, that's like 6 or 7 guys who weren't just placeholders. We're talking about 5 or 6 of your top 6 or 7 defensive players are now in the NFL from a year ago, and it takes a minute to replace that. And usually, what you get is a couple, auditions like Buffalo or Akron in there at the beginning to play a lot of guys and figure out, okay, this works and this doesn't work, and this guy can play and this guy can't play. And, you have that time. Well, there was none of that tinkering or anything this year. It was replace them with the best player available and go play football at a Big Ten level, week 1 go. And it's not going to look the same. And that's a problem for Ohio State fans who don't understand, who don't look under the hood and see that they're not just, as Bob Trumpy used to say about the Cincinnati Bengals under Mikey Boy Brown and Paul Brown way back when, that they're just interchangeable drill bits. That's really not the case at the college level. You didn't replace Chase Young with anybody close to what Chase Young does. That's pretty evident after 3 weeks. We had one of the guys asking Zach Harrison today, what did you think about being labeled as the next Chase Young, and how do you feel that's going so far? Well, I'm just trying to be me and do the best I can and be the best player I can be. That's a lot to live up to. So that's one reason why the defense hasn't had the look and feel. And I think you can get away with it for 2 quarters, which they have. For 4 quarters, when you have to substitute and people break down and you got to give people a rest, and, they've run 8 pass plays in a row and the corners are dragging, you got to take them out of the game and put somebody else in. You're going to have some drop off. And to me, that I don't know, that I'm getting some different texts here. And one of them, one of our guys said that this whole thing about them not having the parents at the game seems kind of ominous, in that maybe cancellation is the very next step. And I don't want to go that far and rumor that, but man, I don't like that. The state of Ohio has really come out with some very stringent policies today. There's a 10 p.m. curfew, not that this game's going to stretch to 10 p.m., and they don't want people out except for essential situations. And I don't know, does putting on a nationally televised college football game count as essential? I don't know. So.
Well, in Michigan they handed down some new strict restrictions, but allowances for Michigan and Michigan State football. So hopefully, but again, remember when during fall camp, when the day pads were supposed to go on, the Big Ten says no pads, and you're like, what is this about? And then like 2 days later, the season was
Big
canceled.
Kev. Big
Kev. But
that meme of Big Kev, bleep them kids. Bleep them kids.
I'm not ready to go forward with the cancellation or anything like that. I think this is just what else can we do to make sure that we're doing everything. And it's like, well, let's just keep the families home, because they don't, that we don't want them coming from out of state also and using our rest areas and getting people sick, I guess. I don't.
Well, basketball had to cancel out of the tournament in South Dakota because South Dakota has become per capita really bad. And I don't have the stats or where they rank or anything, but what the Ohio State doctor, Jim Borchers, told Chris Holtman was, okay, you go to South Dakota, you play your 3 games, and you get on a plane, you come back on the 27th or 28th of November, you are now supposed to quarantine for 14 days. And in that 14-day period, they're supposed to go to Notre Dame on December the 8th, which is within that 14-day period, and play them in the ACC Big Ten thing in South Bend. And if you're following the letter of the protocol, you wouldn't be able to do that. So they had to pull out of the South Dakota thing because of quarantine, 14-day quarantine, among the other idea of going to a state that's on fire right now. So I don't know. We're in a tough time. The vaccine can't come quick enough, and I know this. You don't want it, and we need to stay safe and use common sense. But at the same time, this parents thing just seems kind of like a token thing. It was safe for him to be at the game 2 weeks ago, but not safe for him to be at it this week. And if it's really this unsafe, why are they playing? Why are they sending the Indiana team from Bloomington to Columbus to play this game if it's this dire a situation? And again, I'm just raising rhetorical questions. Don't say that I'm lobbying for a cancellation, but I mean, I don't know. It just seems like a token effort to me.
So we've got a number of comments and questions in the live chat that we can put on the shelf for another week. They're more of the program or historical variety, not specific to Indiana. David Greenshield, we appreciate, one of our fine callers that contacts us all the time. We can compare Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson to the all-time greats on another show.
For an hour entirely.
Let's get beyond 3 weeks. Let's have a little bit more of a sample size before, as Denny Green says, we crown them. Let's let them do it over a course of a season before we invoke the names Chris Carter, Terry Glenn, David Boston, Joey Galloway, Chris Gamble, whoever else, Michael Jenkins, on and on and on. Let's Michael Thomas. Let's let them do it for more than 3 games. And as Tony said, we're going to need a ton of filler the next 2 weeks with at Illinois Thanksgiving weekend and at Michigan State. I don't know who's worse, Michigan State or Illinois. This season, or Michigan, or I know the answer, Michigan.
It's looking like it.
Their next 3 games are against 1 and 3 teams. How do you get excited about any of that and then have to flip the switch and get ready to play the winner of the Wisconsin-Northwestern game, which I would fully expect, even though it's being played at Northwestern. And I know Northwestern stunned them there, I think, 2 years ago, maybe on their way to the conference championship game or whatever. But I'm just of a mind that it'll be Wisconsin that will come through that one. I think Mertz gives them a 5th gear that they haven't had, and he was uncanny against Michigan as well. A guy with his lack of experience that went into Michigan. Granted, their defense isn't all that great. There's no crowd, but man, you can't throw against air and do some of the things that maybe he's done so far this year. So I'll be interested to check that one out, but I don't know what your thoughts are, but I think that's who ultimately Ohio State will play. If Ohio State, figures to win the East, I figure it'll be the winner of the Wisconsin-Northwestern game.
Mm-hmm. I before we go, can we all put in some picks on this Michigan-Rutgers game, for crying out loud?
Oh my God. Feeble and feebler.
I think Rutgers maybe will get some payback for that 78-0 game from a few years ago. So I'm going Rutgers 78-0
Wow.
I think they're going to match them.
No time limit, like in wrestling, Tony, with Roman. What was it? Roman? No, it was McIntyre and Orton on Monday. No time limit, no disqualification. There must be a winner. Stoppage for blood.
7 times later, and it ends in a safety.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is Jim Bowman. He's very, very dry. He used to be the offensive coordinator for Drexel. And on the day that they hired him as the offensive coordinator, I'm standing there in the atrium at Ohio State, and he goes, "We don't care if we win the game 50-48 or 3-2. We just are trying to win the game." And God, that's how they coached for 10 years. Yeah. The score was immaterial to whatever it was. And I said, well, that's fine and dandy until the first I even named the score. The first time they played Wisconsin, it was like 24-17. I said, that's great till the first 24-17 Big Ten loss. And that's exactly what it was. I think Wisconsin beat them in 2001 for his first Big Ten loss was 24-17. You're going to care about scoring points then, believe me.
Well, and then the 2003 Wisconsin game showed you how, trestle ball, yes, it works. But one play can lose you a game when you play trestle ball, and it did in 2003 when Lee Evans hit the
out and up. Yeah. We need to see some out and up Justin Fields' pass is to complete to Chris Olave for a 78-yard touchdown. One of those things. That'd make you feel a lot better this week, and get the freaks out early and often this week, and get
Freaks
into
have
it.
to stay home. Freaks have to stay home.
No freaks, fellas.
Only in the
No
press
freaks.
box.
Yeah, only in the press box. Get out to a quick lead. Get out 17-0, and let's see what Indiana does. Do they panic at that point? I mean, Penix had 2 bad interceptions in the first half against Michigan State. Michigan State was powerless to do him harm, though. I mean, it was like 3 plays punt. I mean, you're thinking, oh my God, they're going to get right back in this thing, and no, you turn around for a minute, Indiana's got the ball back. So yeah,
And so many of Indiana's touchdown drives have come with like half fields after turnovers.
Yes.
So just don't turn the ball over, make them drive the length of the field and see if they can do it.
No doubt.
I'm going to address one comment that's come up a number of times in the chat in various ways about Ohio State's schedule being awful. Okay, yes, Ohio State's schedule on paper has been awful. They had what was supposed to be the second best opponent in the Big Ten, the team that would challenge them and challenge for a playoff. I believe that they got them when they were still motivated, and they still got maybe not a top 10 team, minus Journey Brown, Micah Parsons, and not as good as we thought they would be, but they probably got a top 25 team, and they beat them by 2 scores and really had control of the game by whatever they wanted it to be, 21-3 out of the gate. Other than that, yes, they beat Rutgers, an improved Rutgers team, but still probably the 70th best team in the country. And they beat Nebraska by 5 touchdowns, probably the 50th best team in the country. Sure. But there's a difference between being Ohio State and playing 3 bad teams and us wondering who they are versus Indiana playing 4 bad teams and us wondering who are they. There's a complete difference because Ohio State has a 15-year track record, and this particular unit has about 75 to 80% of the personnel have a track record from dominating at 13-1 last year. Yes,
and they've won something like 70 of their last 75 games too. I mean, there's something outrageous. I know I'm exaggerating. This is not the year where we're discussing strength of schedule. First of all, because it's a completely apples to oranges comparison across the board. Some schools got to play 1 or 2 non-conference games against, like South Florida, who couldn't, beat its own shadow. And so, some of these teams have played teams with propped up records. I mean, Notre Dame, even playing Clemson, who's 7-1, I think the records of their opponents are something like 13-23, something like that. Alabama's opponents are right at 500. I don't have the exact. I crunched this for a tweet that I put out. Somebody brought up, "Whoa, we're making Indiana out to be great." Let's look at the records of the teams that they've played. They're 3-13. I readily grant you that. The 4 teams that they played are 3-13 or 4-13, whatever it is, or 4-12. Ohio State's opponents are 2-9. They've only played 3 teams, and so you can't. You can chum up that number just to see what it is, but this is a year where that number means less than any other year in the recorded history of college football, because you are not playing a like schedule. I think if Ohio State was 5-1 against this schedule, and Alabama was 10-1 against the schedule they played, I'd say, okay, Alabama, definitely deserves the nod over Ohio State. And ultimately, this is how you guys can tell me what you think, but barring something unforeseen, don't we all assume with Trevor Lawrence that Clemson is going to beat Notre Dame the second time? I think Notre Dame is still, if they win the rest of their games, in at number 4. Clemson with 1 loss is in at number 3. Ohio State with no losses is in at number 2. Alabama with no losses is in at number 1. Alabama plays Notre Dame with the most recent loss. They're the 4 seed. And Clemson with the most recent win is the 3 seed against Ohio State, a rematch. And doesn't that seem like where this is all headed? I mean, what variables am I missing? And then you have people like, well, let's prolong the season. Let's prolong the season and play some of these canceled games. The players don't want that. The players on January the 2nd who are done want to go on with the rest of their lives. do their academics in the take 2 weeks off and go see whoever their Mick is. That's what the players want. They don't want to keep playing games till the end of January for your entertainment. No. And what are we waiting on? Who are we waiting on that's going to emerge? We already know it. Florida's going by the wayside when they play Alabama, theoretically. Maybe they knock off Alabama and get the other spot, and Alabama becomes the 4. I don't know. But some of the things you hear people say, this isn't the NFL. We're not paying these guys to play an interminable season that just goes on and on. It's over. On January 11th, it's over. It's done. I mean, to me, I don't get where we are, we're going to crown a real champion. Well, we knew it was not going to be a real season when we started this thing. I mean, we knew it was going to be different than anything else we've ever seen. And we just have to accept it, for as imperfect as it is, that this is what it's going to be. And to bring it all the way around the bend, maybe there'll be a different scenario that pops up, but to me, that's the one that just kind of stares you back in the eye. It says Notre Dame earned their spot, and going to be they're going to have to lose twice to lose it, in my opinion. I mean, who's coming? If they beat Clemson and Clemson has 2 losses and they're out, now we have a discussion. Is it Texas A&M with 1 loss? Is it Cincinnati with no losses? Is it BYU with no losses? There's nobody else even in this discussion. Maybe Oregon if they end up 6 or 7-0, maybe. Which I don't know that they're going to run the table in the Pac-12, but I don't know, guys. I mean, it just seems to me people want to. Well, let's postpone the playoff for a couple more weeks to get a couple more weeks games in, so we get a real sample size. No, this is your sample size. 6, 7, 8 games. There's your sample size. That's it.
In addition to your point, Steve, it's not like the conclusion is coming down to some haphazard, like crazy, like something we didn't expect. Like, man, this playoff looks like it's going to be Purdue, Kentucky, Kansas State, and Stanford. Man, wow, 2020 just went crazy. It's coming down to what we expected it to be. So I don't necessarily know that it's that much of an aberration just because we played 7 or 9 games or 11 games instead of 12 games.
Plus, I think everybody is just ready for college basketball.
That could be it.
Well, Ohio State starts the season next Wednesday, and in true 2020 fashion, we don't have a schedule. The Big Ten can't hash out a basketball schedule with its TV partners. UCLA and Oregon are playing a game on Saturday, and as of 3:00 Eastern time on Wednesday, I don't think they have a start time or a TV channel yet for that game, because the Pac-12 is expecting another game to be canceled and slot that game into it. So, yeah, this is 2020, man. Roll with the punches. So they played a game on Sunday morning, 2 teams that just found out they were playing each other on 48 hours notice. I mean, just be ready.
I'm going to back up my point from earlier with one more statistic, that we know who Ohio State is, even though they've played 3 theoretically awful opponents since Urban Meyer stepped on campus. And Ryan Day, I think my math is correct, 102 wins, 10 losses.
Wow.
I don't think they've changed that considerably in a few months. So I think we know who they are.
Day can get to 20 wins this week, and he'd be 20-1, and he would not be the fastest Ohio State coach to 20 wins, because Urban won his first, 24? Yeah. Now he can beat him to 30, because Urban hit that patch where he joinked off like 3 games like that, and end of 13 and beginning of 14. But
beat him to 25.
He could beat him to 25, but can't beat him to 20.
And Ohio State fans would be okay with him knocking off those 3 losses if it culminates with the national championship.
If he can beat him to 30, 40, and 50, let me tell you, buddy, it's going to be fat times in River City.
All right, guys, if you guys have predictions, we will take them. But keep in mind that 35-17 Indiana's taken. So that's off the board. We don't want that.
We can't use that.
I will go with I think the field goal kicking may be an issue, so I'll stick with touchdowns here. So it's either 35 or 42. Ohio State will maybe have to keep fighting just to keep things distant. So I'll go 42-20.
Okay. As I said, I've been thinking 42-21. Of course, that's right on the line and a terrible cop-out. And I usually move my pick 3 or 4 points either way, depending on how I think it's going to go. And I just of a mind right now, I'm going to say like 42-24, something like that. I just think Indiana is going to make some plays. Maybe I'm the devil's advocate in terms of that. But I don't know. Ohio State's defense certainly has the capability to slam the door on them, but I want to see it. I mean, Indiana has made a ton of great plays. So I'm thinking, let's say 42-25, just as a round number.
Did you have to do that to me, Steve? I had the banner all written out here at 42-24.
Oh, make it 24. That's fine.
I hope it's 25 now.
Or 25.
Is that a
25.
2-point conversion that snuck in there?
Yeah,
Okay.
he'll be chasing the 2 at some point. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Everybody chase my prediction down on Patreon. You get the insider look, you get the predictions, you get the insider information from Steve Merrill, Pro Sports Info, betting advice, all that good stuff. Tony, we appreciate it. Follow Tony. It's just Tony Gerdeman, right, on Twitter?
That's it.
Tony Gerdeman, bam. Then you can follow him on Buckeyes Scoop, the various podcasts. When do you upload those podcasts, Tony?
We record Tuesdays and so we have new episodes Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then after the game Saturday or Sunday. And you can find them at all of your normal platforms. Buckeye Weekly.
Steve is senior Big Ten writer at 247 Sports Bucknuts. Please join him there.
Way senior.
Pardon me?
I said I'm way senior at this point. Super senior.
Super senior.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay.
God.
And what we deliver here each and every week, hopefully, folks, that you value it. And again, sponsor. We want to keep this thing going. We've gone 80 shows. We want to keep it going. So please, if you can do anything in regards to anyone you know, can have them contact me, MarkRogersTV at Gmail. All right, gentlemen, enjoy the game. Whether that be a 42-20 game or a 42-25, I'm very confident it's got to be one or the other, or maybe in between 42-23.
There
They're
you go.
either going to cover or they're not. So, yeah.
All right, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Take care.